Hi, my name is Karyn Grant, and I'm a licensed massage therapist, a vibrational attunement massage therapist, and I do work with the five senses and the healer's touch method, a method that has been created to bring rest and relaxation to those who are in the process of mending their hearts from heartbreak and from grief and anxiety and stress. It's an alternative approach, and I have here with me as my guest, Dr.Jon Skidmore, who is a psychologist and who I will be interviewing as part of this video on bridging the world of psychology and the world of healing arts and the holistic alternative methods of working with people who suffer from mood disorders and the like. So, Dr. Skidmore, I am so happy to be with you.
Thank you, happy to be here.
And I would like to have you tell our viewing audience exactly what it is you do and your areas of expertise and the performance, peak performance and all of that.
I'm a licensed psychologist. I've been here in Utah County now for almost 20 years. My practice includes a number of different areas. Anxiety disorders as it relates to stress, as it relates to performance issues, as it relates to coping with the chaos in the world is a big part of what I do. Part of that sense of anxiety disorder has taken me into the world of coaching performing artists and individuals who are specifically wanting to make sure they've got the edge they need when they're out there, whether it's at a pulpit, whether it's at a conference, whether it's on a court, on a stage. And so that's something I've been doing for quite a while as well. I'm on the faculty of the music department at BYU, teaching the psychology of music performance. And so as I look at what I do there in terms of coaching and teaching performing artists, one of the things that's been fun there is to develop a process to really help people take a performance out of the context of the all-important event that they're either going to win or lose, succeed or fail at, or put it into a process that they can learn from, they can use to step forward with, that they can use this as a way to really improve and continue to improve their performance. A lot of what I do in my office relates to this because we're all performers of some type, whether we're being parents, a mother, whether it's a father who's running his business, whether it's an employee. Parenting is certainly a big issue there as well. One of my favorite things to do is to coach parents and to work specifically with parents to help structure their family in a way that the respect, the cooperation, the communication all increases so the fun and enjoyment occurs. That's something that I do. That goes to another level in terms of dealing with divorce issues, reunification, custody issues. I don't do custody evaluations. But
That's the one thing he doesn't do.
I do not do custody evaluations. I tried 3 of those. I'm not doing another one. That wasn't any fun at all. But the reality is, helping individuals and whatever their performance concerns are improve, families improve their performance and whatever they're trying to work with.
I want to just interrupt for a minute and say, do you see why I chose him? I'm so excited about Dr. Skidmore's work, and I've known you since 2004, 2005, and I don't even know how we met, how that link happened, but I'm so excited that it did, and we've stayed in contact through the years. I would like for you to share how you came into your understanding of the importance of the healing arts and coupling that in the world of psychology.
That's a pretty easy story. I'm in graduate school. I've never been more stressed out in my whole life. And as I finished graduate school, physically, emotionally, spiritually, I was spent. And a variety of different physical complaints like carpal tunnel syndrome had emerged. At one point I couldn't pick up a pencil with my wrist. And just trying to recover and healing from that took me on a journey from chiropractics, acupuncture, massage therapy, a few other wild and crazy things. But it's like, okay, what am I needing that's going to support me? And one of the things that I found, and it's been great to watch how mental health as a field and medicine in general has become so much more open to the mind-body connection. And recognizing they're not separate entities, that they've got to be worked with together. And so discovering benefits from massage therapy, and that's something that really has been a great thing. That's how part of where we got connected. But really realizing that we need multiple ways of supporting and healing. And I think one of the things that also became very apparent to me as I referred clients to massage therapists or the healing arts kinds of things, they deal with their things faster. Whatever kind of emotional and physical stuff is kind of going back and forth. And that as a psychologist, I get to address certain skills, certain ideas, certain history, and have an impact on the client in a different way than the massage therapist does. And that's one of the things I've seen is that tandem or that partnership is much more effective in helping people deal with it. Whatever it is they're dealing with, they move through things faster.
Well, the body is a storage unit, so to speak, and those emotions get lodged and left lingering, the residues of energies from past hurts and anxieties that never got resolved, even as all the way back into childhood. When we were 2 years old, we didn't have the vocabulary to say what hurt or how it hurt. And so that leads me into my next question. In my studies as a licensed massage therapist and as someone who's been very interested in the healing arts, I learned about these two almond-shaped glands in the brain called the amygdala. And I learned that New York University did a study where they found that the smallest diffusible molecules were aromatic molecules, not like peanut oil or olive oil or coconut oil, because those were thicker, heavier oils, but the aromatherapy oils, the fine particles of oils, would travel up through the olfactory bulb and start to do gentle release work with the emotions or the energies that got left in the amygdala all the way back to childhood, kind of like a computer chip holds all that energy on it and that information, and that as this is gracefully, gently released, that emotional clearing occurred. So when I met you, I didn't know the science of what I was doing. I had just felt very impressed when I graduated from massage school in 2001. I felt very urged as I was sitting there at my desk the last day. The words came to my mind. Now you are going to take everything that you learned in massage school. You're going to go study aromatherapy. You're going to add the music as therapy that you do with Christ-centered music. You're going to put it all together into a 5-sense protocol. And you're going to work with people to help them to be comforted, to help them to relax as a relaxation method. So I didn't know why I was doing what I was doing. It wasn't until I met you, probably 4 or 5 years later, that you started to explain to me that you believed in this, and I was shocked. I was like, there's a psychologist out there that believes in what I'm doing, and I didn't scientifically know. So I would like for you to give us a description, your beautiful whiteboard presentation. I sat enthralled watching his whiteboard presentation of his diagram of the brain, the toxic loop and everything that goes on when we are suffering from mood disorders, from temporary mood disorders, and how we can get out of that toxic loop. And then I'll add my piece as a music massage aromatherapy worker with energy, how that might be expedited so that you can understand the inner workings of the brain coupled with your 5 senses.
Well, this will be one of the simplest explanations of the brain, and we'll just start with that.
Recently, I was in Arizona teaching a class at my sister Kristen's house, and as I was teaching the mothers there about the properties of the 5 senses and how we can access them to bring nurturing into our homes and families and help to dispel any negativity and raise the vibration of joy in our homes. Afterwards, a woman came up to me and she had tears in her eyes and she said, everything you were saying was true. She said, I'm going to run home right now and get a book for you. This is her book. She loaned it to me. It's called Art with the Brain in Mind. This book is fascinating as it is a study of how the healing arts works to help heal the brain, the power of music, the power of the 5 senses. I am grateful to be understanding and studying more as I mature in my process, the science behind what I knew in my heart as a 32-year-old just starting this process. So now with the brain in mind, I would like to turn the time over to Dr. Skidmore, and then we will discuss how the arts affect the healing of the brain.
This is going to be one of the simplest explanations of the brain you'll probably ever get. And I'm not going to assume this is even anatomically correct, but it all works. And it'll be a good example of what we're talking about. There's really two parts of the brain when it comes to mental health issues that we need to be aware of. The first is our frontal cortex, in the prefrontal cortex area, underneath the forehead. This part of the brain is about the size of your fist. This is the part of the brain where we explore our options, we understand our choice and agency. This is where we become creative, we plan, we organize. This is also where we can have the social context in terms of empathy and understanding, and relationships show up in this part of the brain. Logic and reasoning are what this part of the brain is famous for. Now, as a survival tool, this part of the brain is to help us move whatever we're experiencing forward, to help us move beyond where we are at, or to manage the circumstances and situations where we're at. It's interesting to note that this part of the brain takes till we're approximately 25 years old before it's fully developed or all the way plugged in. So this is a very important part of our brain. Over here in the midbrain area, there's two other areas that are very important. Karyn mentioned the amygdala. Well, the amygdala and the emotional center, and there's a variety of very small little structures, are more the size of fingernails in this part of the brain. Now, this part of the brain has the responsibility of our survival. You may have heard of this referred to as the fight or flight center of the brain. As this part of the brain gets triggered, it releases a whole series of neurochemicals, adrenaline being one of those. And it creates a whole series of changes in the body. When I work with performing artists, one thing that's pretty clear to me is most of them really don't understand this part of the brain. They don't understand what's being triggered or why. Well, most of us don't understand that, and most of us don't really have much of a sense of how do we regulate or even manage a sense of being triggered, and what's the effect or the impact that has on us. From the very moments of our life and birth, we are encoding information in this part of the brain. We are learning about what is painful. That's really all it wants to know first. What is painful? Well, as it continues to grow, as a child continues to grow, it learns about pleasure and pain. And my granddaughter was at the house, I gave her a blueberry, and she just lit right up with this big smile. That zinged the pleasure center of her brain. Her dad puts in a piece of green pepper, she promptly spits it out. So again, she's already learning about what is in her world and how to relate to it. Anything that relates to pain gets tagged and it's remembered. Again, this has survival value. If we remember what's painful or dangerous, we can avoid it. As we grow, we learn about physical pain, obviously, as we fall down. We also learn about emotional pain, social pain, embarrassment, things like that. So literally anything of a physical, social, or emotional nature gets encoded in this part of the brain. And if it's been tagged, it's constantly scanning. It's like it's on 24/7 radar going back and forth looking for what is tagged. If it recognizes that tag as a historically painful event, there will be an automatic response. Now, I've experienced this response more than once when I've encountered a rattlesnake, and I'm glad it's there. I probably had a half dozen rattlesnake encounters, and never once have I had the urge to bend over and pet it. Why? Because my brain has told me this is dangerous. This is something that could hurt or harm me. So we've got to recognize this midbrain is the home of the first response. Now, in life-threatening situations, this first response will actually take over, and it's going to serve you, and you'll either live or die. That's just how it's going to work. But so much of what we deal with every day in terms of stress, anxiety, disappointment, grief, loss, has nothing to do with a life being threatened. So one way to start to retrain this part of the brain is to take on a motto such as, if it's not life-threatening, it's trivial. If we consider it might be trivial, this part of the brain can manage trivial matters very well. If we have it's threatening, dangerous, we become reactive, we're in this fight or flight response, and that first response will take over. So with emotional issues, with life issues, I like to describe the first response as something that is not to be trusted. Now, that doesn't mean it's always going to be wrong. But that first response is not to be trusted because it's going to be coming from this part of the brain, your habits and history, and we want to be able to get into this part of the brain to move forward. The goal of any kind of therapeutic approach, especially where history is involved, is to recognize when we are triggered, when we're activated into this part of our brain, and to be able to recognize we are in the process of a first response, but we've got to be able to redirect that in a response that's going to move us forward, in a response that's going to be able to be creative, a response that's going to allow us to be able to manage the circumstances and situations that we're in a healthy way. I'm looking at this.